we can no longer assume anything. Once upon a time, generations ago, I suppose, was the last time one could really safely say this. If one grew up in certain kinds of Jewish communities in certain parts of the world, one could assume that most people's essential inclinations and sensibilities and attitudes were more or less based on authentic Torah values and concepts. But as the pasuk states in Tehillim, I'll double check to make sure that I'm quoting this correctly. Tehillim Kof Zayin, as I recall. I'm sorry, Kof Wow, Pasuk Lamed Hey, Tehillim 106:35. Wa'ith aravu v'goyim, wa'ilmedhu ma'asehem. Am Yisrael goes wrong by definition, as this pasuk states plainly, when we live amongst other nations, and therefore, inevitably, inexorably, we begin to learn at least something of their ways, which are not based on the Torah. There is a reason why the Torah mandates that the Jewish people establish a Mamlechet Kohanim V'Goy Kadosh, in other words, a Jewish state, which is defined, which is based on Torah concepts and precepts and modalities of thought and practice. And there is a reason why the Torah does not allow other peoples to live in that Jewish mamlacha, in that Jewish state. And in the Torah itself, it's mufurash, it's explicit. As the Torah also says with regards to intermarriage. If you intermarry with these other nations, then your children will go astray. In other words, and that's exactly what the pasuk says in Tehillim Chof Wow, Wa'ith aravu v'goyim, wa'ilmedhu ma'asehem. When we intermingle with foreign nations who have all kinds of ideas and notions and traditions which are anything but Torah, we inevitably pick up something, more or less, depending on how successful we are in understanding our own values and traditions. It has therefore been a very long time since almost any Jew could say, well, I was brought up in a certain way or in a certain place, in a certain type of community, and therefore I can assume that people's attitudes about most things were basically correct and healthy. We are so far from that reality, unfortunately, that it doesn't even bear discussion. So what can we do? The only thing that we can do is Talmud Torah, study of Torah in all its breadth and depth on a constant basis, a daily basis, and to view the Torah with a pure set of spectacles placed firmly on our eyes. In other words, not to view it through any other lens, through any foreign lens, through any ideology or assumption with which many of us, perhaps most of us, have grown up with. We must understand the Torah in its own terms, as Hagon, Rabbi Haim Zimmerman Zatzal writes in his book Torah and Reason, as he discusses the concept of insiders of Torah and outsiders of Torah. We have to be insiders of Torah. In other words, to be within the Torah and understand the Torah from within, not like some people. And again, I'm sorry I have to say this, but it's true, and it must be said. There is no way of not saying this. In our present day, many people who have the title of rabbi are simply outsiders of Torah. They are viewing the Torah as an object. It is something which they view from without. And wherever they are standing, they are standing in a place, in a psychological, intellectual, spiritual place. And from that place, they are observing this object called the Torah, this particular halakha that they're looking at, or this concept, or this midrash, or that pasuk. They're not viewing it as the Torah needs to be viewed. That is the only solution. If you want to understand if a certain hashkafa, a certain philosophy of life, or a certain concept, notion, attitude, Weltanschauung, use whatever term you choose. If you want to know if it is true, the very best tool for doing that is to check relevant halachot. Because the Tasha Ba'al Peh, the halakha, defines clearly many, many things, concepts, notions, and values, so that if you see from when studying and understanding the halakha on myriad subjects, if you can extrapolate from that a certain value system, a certain approach on which that halakha or set of halachot or certain halachic assumptions are based, then you know this is a true and essential and fundamental part of the Torah. And you can be certain that this is correct, because the halakha would not lead you in that direction. It would not allow you to make such extrapolations and reach such conclusions if that were not the case. On the other hand, if certain people, Jews, Torah Jews, even rabbis, make certain statements or claims, and they claim this is my hashkafa, or this is what I think is a value or an idea or a concept in the Torah, but you find that these things, these claims, these ideas, these concepts do not really square with the various halachic aspects of the Torah, I think you have there before you the clearest proof that those ideas are not correct. They are somehow a distortion. The only caveat is that you need to really know how to study the halakha in depth and reach the complete and comprehensive and profound understanding of those halachot. But if you can do that, or you know someone who can do that, and that's what Chachmei Torah are for, and that's why we pray that there should be Chachmei Torah amongst us, because without that we are truly lost. Such people can and must make pronouncements based on that kind of understanding, and that's what we must all do as individuals and as communities and as a nation. We must follow, we must study, internalize, and learn to think and live according to the Torah, and not make any assumptions. Never accept any assumption or any claim without examining it.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. We would also like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org. If you are inspired by Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to get involved in Torah Eretz Yisrael activities in your local area, please fill out the relevant form by going to the link which appears on the screen.